So, as I say, I'm Steve, and I'm deeply involved with voluntary sector organisations and have been for many years. And about getting on for 4 years ago, I did some training and I started to coach as part of doing other things, as working within a voluntary sector, a charity within London, but also travelling and supporting on a volunteer basis some organisations. I came to Athens and supported an organisation there, and that's kind of the connection with how I linked in with Refugee Ed. But so today, what I hope we can do is just talk about some of the foundation blocks of what coaching is. So I know you'll be using it in lots of different kind of contexts and not kind of necessarily within a very strict coaching kind of way. So I understand that, but I am approaching this as though you want to be coaches, right? So that's how I'm approaching this. And the reason for that is I think once you get the full beauty of it, I hope, then it's easier to see how you can translate that into other arenas and into other ways of working. So, since I've done my training and been coaching for a while, I've certainly used it in how I work with staff, with volunteers, with people I'm responsible for in terms of that, the kind of people management, and it's certainly helped in terms of being more reflective and being more empathetic and hopefully a better manager. So I guess that's possibly where lots of you will be bringing those skills. But as I say, I think, I'm going to try and give you the full dose, and then you can kind of see, okay, this works here, but maybe this thing over there, it's not very practical. So yeah, that's kind of how you translate it, but let's get going. So, first of all, let me just ask you, okay, I need technical hitch. How do I move? Oh, right, there we go. Okay, so I want to ask you, how would you describe coaching? So if you were just to have one word or a very short sentence on what you think coaching is, just put it in the chat there. It will give you 30 seconds to think about that. So how do you perceive it? Okay. I'm assuming people are writing busily and it's been a bit slow. Oh, here we go. Facilitating exploration, absolutely. Helping someone reach a point of understanding, yeah. Inspiring self-reflection, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can just go home now because you just already got it. So, yeah, so here's a couple of quotes from about what coaching is. I'm just going to minimize people so I can see the whole screen. It unlocks a person's potential to maximize their performance. Coaching helps them to learn rather than teach them. That coaching is a creative conversation, allowing a person to explore, to unravel complex, that should be feelings or ideas, to consider options and set a route for a more fulfilling life. So yes, so as you've already said, it's very much about that person discovering something. It's very person-centered, and it's very much about them finding the answers, coming to a resolution within themselves. And your role as a coach is to enable them to do that, or to help them, support them along that path. Okay, so here are 4 principles, underlying principles of coaching, the ethos of coaching. And when I did my training, we spent half a day talking about these and, you know, kind of working out how we feel about them. However, I'm just going to give them to you, and we don't really have time to talk about it today because, as I say, we're on only got a short period of time, relatively speaking. So the principles here are that people are not broken. There are no wrong people. All actions are carried out with positive intentions. People are doing the best they can with the resources they have or the options that are available to them. And people change all the time. And this is inevitable that people change. And so, and this is really what drew me to coaching. This is very much about what drew me to coaching. That it's a very generous way of looking at the world. It's the kind of, you know, when I did my training, I wasn't thinking about being a coach or using it within that environment particularly. I really wanted it to give myself some more strings to my bow, some more tools in the toolkit around working with people, whether that's, you know, as a manager or encouraging teams and building positive teams, or whether that was within kind of a workshop training type of environment. I was initially simply just after better ways of working with people within those environments. But when I started to explore and did a bit of training, got some training around, you know, coaching, and we explored the ethos, this really blew me away because it's very much about, you know, this is really the world I want to live in. It's a very generous world. It's a world that's very warm-hearted. It's a world that sees people in a positive light, and kind of assumes that people want to do well, assumes that people want to give their best, assumes that people at all times are doing the best that they can. And so this really was the thing that attracted me, and it was really through this kind of ethos of coaching that I then did a substantial training course, and to explore it more. So it was really, this was the thing that was my in, and I still get a bit emotional when I kind of think about those concepts, because to me, it's, as I say, this is the world I want to be in. Now, I guess, like myself, particularly in the early days, you know, it's really around how I work better with people. And some of the other ways that you will be working with people is through practices of mentoring, and also around how you are training as well. So coaching isn't mentoring, but sometimes these things kind of get merged together in the way that we talk about coaching, or about how we talk about mentoring. And sure, there are overlaps, undoubtedly. It's not like clear lines between these things, but there is a distinct emphasis on that is different. So I know there's a lot of words on here, and I'm sure Colette's not going to be happy with me, but I just wanted to kind of try and break this down a little bit. So in terms of mentoring, you know, as we've already talked about, and you've already talked about in your responses, it's very much about the person-centered approach. It's very much about that person's agenda. You know, with mentoring, you kind of come into it as a bit of an expert, perhaps, or at least that's how the coach, the mentee might be viewing you. You may not feel like that, of course, but that's certainly how the mentee will be viewing you. You know, that you come in with a certain amount of expertise that you will share within that professional realm with your coachee. But coaching is very much about, this is the person's agenda and how we're going to work with that agenda. And it's a collaboration, it's a conversation, it's a dance between the two of you to get to those outcomes of that your person that you're working with wants to get to. Obviously, one of the big things as well is that often coaching is not within an organisation. It's increasingly becoming the case a little more, but it's still not common for a coach to sit within a organisation. But often, people within organisations, managers or CEOs or whatever, will mentor other people within an organisation. So there's a bit of a difference there. And of course, training is the other big thing. So you may be involved in training. And of course, again, it's very much, the big difference here is that it's about that person-centred approach. You're going in as a trainer, as a bit of an expert. Again, you may not feel like that, but that's certainly how you're going to be viewed. And there's high trainer involvement. The knowledge and solutions tend to be held by the trainer, whereas within a coaching environment, and this is also true for group coaching, because it's not always a one-to-one thing. And I've done group coaching sessions, and that is really, it's very much about the expertise is in the room. Within this context, the expertise is in the virtual room. Yeah. If we had more time, I'd certainly be talking less and drawing the expertise from yourselves, because I know that you know a lot of this stuff already, and sometimes it's about framing it, it's about sometimes packaging it together in a certain way, but you know a lot of this stuff already. Although of course it's always good to be reminded of these things, because the outside world, it's all about, the voices from the outside world is often about domination and about fear, and what we're trying to do within a coaching context is about encouragement and nurturing. So there's some of the differences. Do let me know if you have any questions, stick them in the chat, and I'll look every so often and try and come back to you, but there will be time for questions at the end as well. Okay, so there's a few things here. So just, again, stick in the chat what you feel might be some of the key ingredients to build that relationship. I called it a coaching relationship. You may want to think about in terms of your relationship with a member of a team or with a volunteer. So what are some of the ingredients that enables that to flourish? Just put in a couple of words. 30 seconds. Okay, so we have non-judgmental, openness, trust, again, fantastic. Availability, listening, approaching, active listening, great. I mean, if we were to put that into a Wordle, that would look brilliant. There's a lot of, and we're going to be touching on lots of those things, but as I've already said, I know you know a lot of this stuff, but it's good to be reminded as well. Yeah, so here's a few of those things that you've already talked about. So listening skills, which we're going to touch on, and powerful questions, again, we're going to try and touch it. We're going to deal with that today. And then there's some other things there. So we talked about it being client-led or person-centered, as I've got later on. Trust, you've talked about, and that's so key. Confidentiality and being ethical, positive, encouraging. Directional, so within the coaching relationship, it's lovely that people feel safe and trust in you with some of their stuff. Obviously, that's a wonderful thing. But as a coach, or taking that coaching approach, we need to always be remembering that our role here is always about enabling that person to look upwards and onwards. It's always about the learning. It's always about the trying to find the direction for the next thing, or to help them clarify what that next direction, what the direction is. And the last three, we will be touching on those as we go along, which is why I just kind of highlighted them in italics there. Again, person-centered, we've always touched on that. And presence and curiosity, we'll be looking at those a little bit more as we go along. But they are also key to the coaching relationship. Okay, so active listening. As you've already said, this is a key element of coaching, or taking that coaching approach. And you'd think, because it's one of our core senses, you'd think we'd be good at listening, right? But apparently, this may come as no surprise to you guys, but apparently we're pretty rubbish at it. So I've read a statistic, and it doesn't say where it's from, so who knows, but this stat said that we spend about 80% of our time communicating in some way. So that could be writing, could be listening, could be speaking, but in some way we are using our communication skills 80% of the time, which is a lot. And 50% of the time, roughly, is using our ears and listening. And yet, we only absorb about 30% of the information that's given to us. So what's going on for us? I mean, why is that? Right? I mean, that's the first question. Why are we only able to absorb that amount of information? So, I mean, I'm sure you have your thoughts on that. But just think about that time when someone's come to speak to you in the office or in the centre, and they sat down and they're sharing something with you, and what starts to happen to your thoughts? You know, what starts to happen? I mean, if typically, maybe I'm going to be confessing something which never happens to you, but for me, the thing that happens to me is that I start to hear their question or their comments or their part of, you know, what they're saying to me, and so they tell me about an area. You know, they went to visit an area, and I'm now thinking about that area, and I'm thinking about the time I visited that place, and actually that thing happened to me there, and I want to share that now with that person. So I'm no longer listening to what they're saying. I'm busy thinking about when can I jump in. This is all done in a very kind of subconscious way, of course. There was one wonderful time when someone was talking to me. I could not hear one word that they were saying because I couldn't remember their name. And I spent all the time thinking, now, what's your name? Is it Julie? Is it Joanne? Is it Julia? These are the kind of things which go on all the time. Or we're thinking, yeah, it's getting on for 4 o'clock now. I really don't need this. You know, because really I need to leave early and I need to pick up the kids, or I need to get the dinner on, or I need to visit my friends in the cafe. Yeah, so we're preoccupied with stuff which is going on for us. So, what is active listening? So, within coaching models, a classic thing that they've done is to break things down into 3 levels of listening. So level 1 is that conversational, internal listening that we've talked about already. You know, we hear that person and respond what it means to me, or my feelings, or my thoughts. And of course, there's nothing inherently wrong with that. You know, that this is how we communicate with people on a day-to-day level. There's nothing, you know, so it's not like what we're doing is wrong, we're not doing anything wrong, but we just need to be conscious that these are the kind, you know, we get lots of chatter in our heads, as we've described, and so, yeah, you know, within the coaching context, this probably isn't quite enough. Yeah, okay, I think we've said enough about that. Okay, yeah, I was just checking that I've covered everything now. So that's level 1, and then level 2 is where we're conscious of that chatter. We're conscious of, yeah, when that thing happens, I recognize that I tend to respond in that way. So now we're conscious of it. So now we're conscious, we can start to address it, and we start to do something about that. And this is this is also true for coaching, right? That with your clients or the people that you're working with, people coming to a point of realization, that's the first point of change. And change can't happen until there's realization. You know, there's a certain amount of consciousness about a situation, about a behavior, about an ingrained pattern, about an underlying belief. It's then that you can start to address, or that person can start to address that and how they can change. So now we're conscious of our listening, or non-listening, maybe, and so now we can start to change that. And we can start to be more present. So this is a word which is often used within coaching, and by that, and in a way, it's a technical thing, but it's also about an attitude. So the technical thing is, okay, let's talk about the attitude first, because it's there on the screen, so maybe that's easier to do it that way around. So yeah, so it's about putting aside judgments and assumptions, and it's being consciously curious about that person's story. We all love a story, yeah. You know, whatever age we are, we just love stories. So use your natural curiosity to explore with that person. It's putting aside that mind chatter, as we've said, and then it's starting to dig a little deeper with questions. But I also think there's something else going on, which is at kind of at a slightly deeper level, and it's a kind of a more, it's not a technical thing. So in a minute we'll talk about verbal and non-verbal cues. So there's you know, that helps. We'll talk about, we'll just explore that a bit in a sec. But there's something which, when you are with a person, you are consciously thinking, this person is not broken. That this person has the resources you know, available to them, that they are doing the best that they can with all the resources and the options that they have. So, you know, with that, you're coming with a particular attitude, a state of mind, and you know, that all helps within that coaching relationship. Does any of that make sense? I hope it does. So let me just ask you, and again, 30 seconds to put something in the chat there. What are some of the things which demonstrate that we are actively listening? What do we do? You know, again, a lot of we just do it as kind of a subconscious level. We don't even think about it sometimes, but let's try and break that down a little bit. So yeah, lots of eye contact. Oh, I like that. Lots of eye contact, yeah, a bit of leaning forward, or yeah, kind of body language, yeah, nodding, yeah, facing the person, fantastic. Yeah, absolutely, that's really great. So, yeah, so let's just talk a little bit about that. So eye contact, after all of that, I'd say eye contact is your number one supremo kind of device, if you like. It could be seen as a device, but it's also a very human thing. So eye contact is really up there as kind of top level. And so when you're with someone, just maintain eye contact with them. So now some people say, but, you know, isn't that a bit freaky? Like, you know, as a man to a woman, maybe. So couldn't that come over as a bit kind of odd or strange? Obviously, I'm not saying you kind of oddle them or kind of, you know, stare wide-eyed, but you're just with an open posture, just keep eye contact with them. And now, and they won't, the person will do what they do. And I can guarantee you, they will not be staring back at you most of the time. Most of the time, they're looking elsewhere, they're looking down, they're looking up, they're looking away into the distance. You know, they're very interested in their shoes, you know, which is a classic thing if people are feeling stressed. So, but they will come back to you. Their eyes will again come to your eyes, and you're just there, acknowledging and just saying, yeah, okay. There's a really interesting comment. I'm going to come to that in a sec. So yeah, you're just there, and when they come back to you, you can maybe you want to give a little nod or a little you know, just a tiny smile, reflex, and just to let them know, yeah, I'm still here, I'm still listening, I'm still engaged, and I'm hearing you, because that's what people want. They want to be heard, and so it's just very gentle. And if you do feel it's getting a bit weird, you know, if they are staring at you, yeah, okay, maybe you want to look away. But you know, it's just a very natural human thing to want to be heard, and this is just a way of indicating that that is what's going on. So eye contact is very, very, very important. Yeah, a little smile, a little nod of the head, you know, some body language, just to acknowledge, yes, I'm hearing you. Posture, open, be open. So try not to have your arms folded across your chest. You know, try and keep an open posture. Reflect back to that client. So what you're doing there is you're demonstrating you're listening, saying, oh yeah, so previously you mentioned about Joe, your manager, and you did, you know, when you said that, you said that, you know, through gritted teeth. What's going on for you? Yeah, so you're kind of reflecting back, or you're saying, yeah, you mentioned that. Of course, I can't even think of any examples now, but yeah, you know, that's something that they've already said. You're just reflecting that back and letting them know, yeah, I've heard you, and now I'm letting you know that I've heard you in a gentle way. A really important thing is to acknowledge, and what we're talking about acknowledging there is acknowledging people's strengths. So, for example, I might say to a person that I've maybe spoken to previously, and they're relating a story, and I might acknowledge and say, oh, that just sounds fantastic. I mean, the way you delivered it sounds like the way you delivered that PowerPoint was spot on. It just sounded so good. And just to think, 3 weeks ago, you told me that you don't do public speaking. So you're acknowledging their strengths and their progress that they've made. So again, you know, one of the things we're doing within this coaching approach is about encouraging that person to recognise that they are learning and to acknowledge that they are learning. So acknowledgement is really key. Questioning, of course, where we're going to come to that in a little while. And if it's a regular thing, so it may be something you meet someone every week or every 6 weeks even, you might just have a couple of notes that you can just say, oh, last time when we spoke, you were talking about X, Y. I mean, how's that going on for you now? So just to have something, you know, that you recognise that what they're talking about before is important, and you're remembering that and acknowledging that you've remembered that. So there's a few things. There's going to be others, I know, but here we go. Here's a few here. And again, stay present. So this is, you know, that kind of murky thing that we're not quite sure what it is, but we kind of know that it's important, where it's kind of some of those technical things around eye contact, blah, 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 that you've talked about, but also just that attitude that you come with of saying, I recognise that you're not broken, I recognise that you have the resources within yourself, and that you're doing the best you can. Hey, you know, things are moving onwards and upwards. Too far. And thirdly, all right, here we go. Third area of listening. So this is what they call total listening. So here, this is where you're picking up on all those cues. You're picking up on the way that someone is speaking, and you're picking up on their body language, and you're picking up on kind of physical change. So by that, I mean tears, there's an obvious one, tears, laughter, silence, shouting. Yeah, so these kind of things which happen, people sweating, but it could also be a bit more subtle than that. It could be a person, when they talk about a situation, they always look down, or they always look into the distance. So you can acknowledge that. You can raise that. That's completely fine. You can say, I've just noticed, and I'm not sure what's going on here, and maybe I'm wrong, because, we're always we're always couching our terms in sense of what's true is what's true for that person. So what I'm perceiving that may be mixed up with something that's going on for me. It could be that I didn't have my cornflakes that morning. Could be that I've had a really heavy lunch, and it's kind of just affecting how I'm feeling about things. Or I had an argument with my wife that morning. Of course, these things never really happen, but possibly, right? So there could be stuff that's going on for me as well. So you're always kind of couching this in kind of gentle terms. And so you could kind of say, I could be wrong, but I've noticed that when you talk about your manager, you always look down at your feet, and you always get a feel. It looks to me like you're getting stressed. I mean, am I right, or what's going on there? You can raise these things, or you could say, I've noticed you're a bit misty-eyed when you're talking about your co-worker there. I mean, what's going on for you? So you can acknowledge these things and raise them. That's completely fine. The thing not to do is to put any judgment on those comments. So you're saying those things, but you're not putting any judgment with that. So they could say, oh no, you're completely wrong. And you say, okay, it's fine. Or they could start to explore that a little bit. So the difference between level 2 and level 3, it's partly about picking up on all of these things and picking up on your vibes that you're kind of getting, and moving from a place of maybe just probing through questions around fact-finding, and then moving it to a place where you're thinking strategically about, well, how can I use this time to enable that person to learn? So I hope some of that has been helpful. We're going to do a little breakout now, and I'm going to ask Colette to put you into pairs. And how this is going to work is very, very simple. So don't be scared. It's very simple. One person's going to be a listener. One person's going to be a talker. And I'm just going to ask you, as a listener, not to say anything. You can give non-verbal cues if you wish, but do not ask any questions. Do not do a or yeah, or I know, yeah, yeah. None of that, okay? You are quiet, you are silent. And the speaker, I want you to bring a real life situation, okay? So I don't want it to be something you're making up, or a scenario, or something that your friend told you. I want it to be you, yeah, a real life situation, something that's really going on for you. However, if on a scale of 0 to 5, 0 is writing a shopping list, and 5 is telling someone your most intimate, deepest secret, let's aim for something around a 2. 3 at tops, yeah? But nothing heavier than that, okay? We need to be kind to our co-worker here. So, yeah, so we're going to limit it to something that's real for you, but we're going to limit it to something which isn't too heavy. And for you to talk about, or for that person your co-worker to receive, okay? And we're going to do 2 minutes talking, and then swap round, 2 minutes talking, and 1 minute just having a very quick debrief. How was that for you? How did it feel? Anything you noticed? Yeah, through the experience of listening, and then through the experience of talking. Okay, does that make sense? Great.
Steve, do you want to be in one of the breakout rooms?
I could be if it makes up numbers.
Well, I'll create them, and you have been assigned to one, so you're welcome to join it if you want to.
Okay.
Because there'll be
yeah.
in there. Oh, Eliza and Harriet's together. Maybe I should mix the groups.
Or we're not really listening when someone talks to us. That's the common experience. That is the norm. So when someone actually bothers to listen, that for people can be transformational. Just to be for that person to recognise that they are being heard. I was in Nepal and I was doing some coaching with an NGO in Nepal, and then one of the person I coached was this young woman, and within that kind of working context, most people come and frame it within work. I always say, look, this is your space, the agenda of yours. You can talk about whatever you want to talk about. But most of the time, people talk about a work situation or something that's going on for them, or a place they want to be, what's the next role for them, or they want to start an NGO in 10 years' time, how do they get there? So it's kind of work-related in some way. But this young woman found herself, and I don't think she meant to, because it's not how she started, talking about what it's like being a young Nepali woman in quite a conservative culture. And at one point she put her hands on her head and she says, I've never been allowed to think like this. Just allowing that person to talk and to express themselves openly, without judgment, without saying, oh yeah, but the cultural context here is such and such, but just allowing that person to talk was transformational for that young woman, to the point where the physical cue was there. We talked about those physical cues. The physical cue for her was to place her hands on her head like her brain was aching. Okay, said enough on that. So people come with their stuff, and sometimes it's like they just dump it. They just talk about this, they talk about that, they talk about this thing, the other thing, and you can use yes or no type questions or closed questions just to clarify, just to say, so what you're saying is you want to leave your position and you want to find a new role. Well, no, that's not what I'm saying. What I said is, so it just helps to clarify. So they are useful for that, but generally speaking, they're not, just to use with caution. Now, open questions is the elixir of life for every coach. This is where the magic happens. This is where stuff really starts to open up. People really start to feel the benefit of this approach. So the type of words that you'd use, or verbs you'd use, how, who, what, when, where. I'm going to talk about why in a moment. But these are the kind of things. And with these words, they allow a person to go in a million different directions. So instead of saying you travelled to Spain in March, you could say, what is the purpose of you travelling to Spain? Or, there you go. That's a good one. That's good enough. And so it could be, I went to get married, or I went to dance, or I went to sit on the beach, or I went to find a man, or, it could be a million different things, right? I went to volunteer with an NGO working with refugees. It could be a million things. So these words allow that exploration to happen. Why is a tricky word, and some coaching and some coaching manuals are very down on the word why. And the reason for that is within the English language, it can sound accusatorial. Why did you do that? It's like you're wagging the finger. Why did you do that? And so just be cautious with using that word. I would never say don't use it, but just be cautious. In fact, it can be a real way of cutting through the crap. It could be, you said you're going to invest time in your relationship. Why are you going to work every weekend? So it could be a way of really cutting through and getting to the heart of the matter. So you're calling someone out, you're challenging someone on the way that they're responding. It's not, they're saying one thing and doing another. That's a classic reason why you might want to use that word why. And also, I think, this is my thoughts, that actually within a lot of cultures, they're not as prissy as the British culture are out, they're far more direct, and they're quite happy to be, that's just how it is, and so it's not such a big deal. So probably in some cultures less of a problem, but just be aware of it. And I would just say, if you're new to that relationship, you need to have a bank of trust. I think I would say you need a bank of trust before you start to use those challenging words. So if you have a good rapport with that person, go ahead. But if you're not, if you still feel like, well, still building on this relationship, then maybe just be a little bit cautious. Rhetorical questions, not very useful, simply because we're not really asking for a response. And so they don't encourage learning, and again, with a rhetorical question, often the tone of voice can